Welcome back to TYTSports. Guys, the playoffs, they tip off tomorrow. The second season begins. Those who call themselves diehard NBA fans, they really start caring tomorrow. They watch one playoff game and make all conclusions based off the first game. And I can't wait to see the rapid reactions. But we have, of course, some predictions, because who would we be if we weren't? I am joined, of course, by the legendary Andre Snellings. Andre, it's been a minute. How are you?
I'm doing good, especially now that I'm a legend.
Well, yeah, you're the legendary Andre, so you are the favorite basketball correspondent on the channel.
Well, that's what's
Your
up.
Competition is like Liss, J.R. Jackson. Yeah, you're up there. You're definitely top two.
No competition.
No competition. We have 4 good matchups, and I think 3 of which should fall a certain way, 1 of which may be a coin flip. Let's start with the Warriors and the Blazers. If you saw Damian Lillard saying what you're pretty much supposed to say, the Blazers are going to win in 6.
Blazers in 6 or 7. Blazers in 6. Blazers in 6. That confident.
Because how bad would it sound if Damian Lillard went, we're going to get our asses kicked?
Yeah, pretty much. I love this matchup. I really, and especially in the West, I like a lot of the matchups. They all seem like if you were writing the story of the first round, this is who you would pick. Damian Lillard, kind of his whole career is skill-wise been like Steph Curry light.
Yep.
But personality-wise is more like Draymond Green. And I love that about him.
Yep.
And so, the Warriors are clearly the better team. I mean, they should win. It shouldn't really be that challenging. You just never know. Like, Lillard might score 55, just because he wants to keep his team in the game, And so I'm expecting this to be an entertaining matchup. I think the Warriors win. It really shouldn't even go 6. Warriors should win in 5.
Right.
But, I'm hoping Lillard can get hot enough to keep it interesting.
Well, I agree with this 100%. Unsurprising. I got to find things to disagree with you on in general. But last year, this was one of the most fun 5-game series you really ever saw. Some of the first 2 were blowouts in Oracle, and then they brought it back to Portland, and they won that first game. And then for a second, it was almost a 2-2 series. This 73-win or 74-win Warriors team last year were at one point in overtime away. They won that game 132-125 to go up 3-1 and then finish the series. But you had yourself a very interesting, dramatic middle, a lot because they live and die with that backcourt. And Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum combining for 80 points on any given night. I've seen it. I've recapped it 5, 6, 7, 8 times this year, at least. So yeah, I like that guard matchup. I think it's fun. I think it's impossible to not like Damian Lillard. And if you don't like Damian Lillard, you're just a bad person, down to your core.
Right.
You can't not.
Yeah, so 2 things on that. For one, you mentioned them being guard-centric, and they are.
Yep.
If Yusuf Nurkic can come back and actually play, and I don't know if that's been finalized yet, he gives them a different dimension. It was once he really got settled in that they went on that run to kind of end the season, and then he broke his leg. And it seems unlikely he'd come back from a broken leg in a couple weeks, but he had a scan on Wednesday, and he's supposed to get an update soon. Yep. So, that would maybe change things a little bit. Maybe make it a 6-game prediction instead of a 5.
I think Brandon Roy did that. Something along the lines of like bad injury 7, 8 days later on the court and scored 16 in 20 minutes, and you're like, you just broke he's got a broken, guard the guy with the broken leg.
Yeah,
somebody
it didn't end up so well in the long term for Brandon Roy, though. So
that did not go well. It's very true. The next matchup is one that you would think, based on if you watched sometimes when the Clippers play basketball, that this could be a team to get upset by the 5 seed. But when you watch the Clippers play the Jazz in any 4 of the games this year, they haven't had all that much trouble. They swept that 4-game series, depending how much weight you put on the regular season. How upset prone are the Clippers to lose to the Jazz? Or how the opposite to that is, how strong could the Clippers get to pose a threat in the second round?
Yeah, the Clippers, they're the enigma.
Yeah.
Enigma? The enigma. They always are. They have the top end talent to compete with anybody. Like if you were making a barbershop type conversation, you can say, okay, at their best, I'll give you Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan versus Steph Curry. Well, not so much for Kevin Durant, but Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson.
Right.
That's an interesting 3-on-3 matchup. Where they would always fall short before is A, their bench was terrible, and B, they, every year their main players would be hurt in the playoffs.
Yep.
This year they seem to have got the injuries out the way early. I don't necessarily trust Blake Griffin's knee because they don't really tell us anything. He'll be playing, and then all of a sudden he just won't play for 2 weeks, and then he'll play some more. So with that being said, if they're healthy, they're better than the Jazz. I like the Jazz a lot. I really like Rudy Gobert. He's one of my favorite kind of just players out there. I like the way he plays. But the Clippers, if they're healthy, are better than the Jazz. They're not better than the Warriors, especially, if they can, factor Durant back in. But they shouldn't have to hold their head down against the Warriors. They should be able to say, you know what, we're going to bring it to you. You got to beat us. Whether that actually happens, the last few playoffs, it hasn't for the Clippers. They just have not been their best.
I actually was recently at the Clippers-Mavericks game. Check out Dirk Nowitzki. I felt like it's somebody I just needed to see, even though he's 75 years old at this point. Still fun to watch play. They almost couldn't close against them, and it's just those little things where I'm going, God damn it! You got Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin. You have the greatest player of all time in Jamal Crawford coming off the bench. There should be no problem. I'm a diehard Jamal Crawford fan. It's the only time my fandom comes out. Of all players I know, but guy's got some of the best handles. But so, by the way, and on the Rudy Gobert note, I don't think there's any way you can undersell this. I think he's the All-NBA first-team center. I think there's cases for other players, but I think what Gobert has done in every metric this season has been directly related to the fact that the Utah Jazz are the 5 seed in the Western Conference. He kind of is their takeover player, even though he's in a weird form of not being the scoring takeover player.
Exactly. I wrote an article some months ago when he didn't make the All-Star team about how Rudy Gobert was the best defensive player in the NBA. Yep. And I think ultimately it comes down to between him and Draymond. They're 1 and 2 in some order, but either way, he's a huge impact player on defense. And then there towards the end, he's always had, good hands, good length. He could finish around the rim. But there towards the end of the season, it seemed like either the Jazz finally recognized that he's taller and more athletic than everybody else, or else it clicked to him. But all of a sudden he started scoring. Yep. And he's not Shaq, but he went on weeks in a row where he was a solid 20 points per night type player, on top of being arguably the best defensive player in the NBA. So yeah, I'm really big on Rudy Gobert. Saw him in Vegas a couple years ago against the Greek Freak.
We saw him at Summer League. He was wearing a PSG shirt. And sitting in front of us, and it was tough to see. And he was sitting 3 rows below us because he's 19 feet tall.
He's a little bit tall. He is. I've heard that rumor.
God, what a strategy. Coaches don't want to prepare for that. That's not a fun matchup for even the likes of DeAndre Jordan. It's not a fun matchup for him either, although he is the freak athlete version, in a way, of Gobert. The most fun matchup, I think, of the first round on both sides of this, and I think is going to get the most attention. I also think it's unfairly going to make people decide their MVP when it really shouldn't, because it's a regular season award. The Rockets and the Thunder. The Rockets finished, I think, 11.5 games over what their Vegas win total was supposed to be. You were one of the very first to write that Mike D'Antoni is going to take James Harden and just make his numbers go on steroids, and you underestimated them. You wrote here are my you had 2 projections. I want to find the article to throw up for this. You had 2 projections, one of which was here's where I kind of think it should be. And then here's where if it's out of this world crazy, and it actually almost hit greatest offensive season of all time numbers. It did. And you look back, and in the beginning of the season, I'm sure there was response this is insane. And now we're going, what does Andre know? What is he doing?
This actually happened. That was, we make on-air public predictions all the time. Right? And so they don't always go well. Is a conservative way to put it. But yeah, this was one that actually did go well. The way that I thought that it should go was the way that it went. So I really like Harden and D'Antoni's system. I did before the season started, and it's played out as the season's gone along. They surrounded him with a bunch of shooters, which was exactly what he kind of needed. They finished with a much, much better record than the Thunder, but you can make the argument they're not really more talented than the Thunder. The their role players are beneficial because they're 3-point shooters, but you could argue the Thunder have better big men. The Thunder, have some really good athleticism and perimeter defensive wing players. They just don't have the kind of stupid volume shooters that the Rockets have.
You only got to score 135 points to beat the Rockets.
Yeah, the Rockets, they kind of, not only is this the ultimate Mike D'Antoni team, and is James Harden kind of the ultimate Mike D'Antoni lead guard, but it's also the ultimate, their GM, Daryl Morey, he's the kind of Billy Bean of basketball. And, the analytics say the 3 is a better shot than the 2, and you can be more efficient that way. And so it seems like he had started building a team kind of in this mold, and then he kind of, what he thought was lucked into Dwight Howard. And I think he kind of went away from what he wanted to do.
Right.
And it just didn't work. But now Howard's gone, and so he was able to go all in again. He's like, he was like, I have a team full of 3-point shooters, and I'm going to trade for Lewis Williams. That's how I get down.
Love sweet Lou Williams. He was a perfect fit. Once he left LA, I was like, man, that's a perfect fit for Lou Williams. He'll be the 9th 3-point shooter on the team. You need depth. Mm-hmm. They have a second 3-point shooting lineup that NBA 2K actually has 2, 3-point shooting and 3-point shooting. And then they also have small and big. That's not an option for every team, just the Rockets. The one thing I wanted to say, I think the difference maker for the Rockets to beat the Thunder is Patrick Beverley on the defensive end, who at times has been brilliant. And I love that they gambled on Clint Capella, the young center, to step up in the absence of Dwight Howard, which still are it's a big shoe to fill. And he did it at not the same statistical efficiency, but better in some areas, and just willingness to be a part of the system, a part of the team, and know that James Harden is the de facto leader. There's no ego there. And sometimes that works out more. It's a very Spurs-esque thing. And I think that's what's going to make the difference between the Houston Rockets. Although, I bet the Thunder, just because, come on, I want to see Westbrook get like 60, 20, and 20 in a playoff game. I think we all the guy plays 195%. That's what's going to be fun. But on the Thunder side, I think as you were alluding to, Cantor can play offense. We know that. So if this is the ultimate shootout, is the Rockets and the Thunder. There's not going to be defense, but don't be surprised if that's what makes the difference down the stretch in a lot of these games. That's going to decide. And I mean, they take so many threes. You got to score 115 points to beat the Rockets. You just have to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Thunder have probably the best upset chance of any of the lower seeds.
I do too.
Definitely in the West, maybe in the whole playoffs. Because as I was pointing out, they're not necessarily worse than the Rockets. They just, the Rockets' style of play was very, very effective in the regular season. So now this will be a test. The playoffs are all about matchups. Westbrook is a matchup nightmare. He's going to just, and I love the fact that him and Harden were the backcourt on the Thunder, a handful of years ago.
It's a great storyline.
But I mean, so like I could legitimately see the Thunder winning this series, in 6 games. Like it wouldn't shock me. I'm picking the Rockets in 6 because I think ultimately their kind of high, almost oppressive type offense they're like a team version of the pressure that Westbrook applies as an individual. That makes sense. And so I think that they'll win. But I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if we saw the Thunder in the second round.
I agree. Look, I'm taking the Thunder out of fandom, which is, don't bet with me, people, please. When I'm doing the RotoWire column, that's where you take my bets, not where I'm taking fandom over everything else. As for the Spurs and the Grizzlies, this is an overshadowed series. It will not get the same media attention that all these other ones will because of the players involved. I love what Mike Conley's done this season. I think he's the most underappreciated guard, unfortunately playing in a time where there's like 15 point guards that are all world-class style of play. The Grizzlies have been there, man. They just unfortunately got the Spurs. And I know the Thunder knocked off the Spurs last year. It was a different Thunder team, obviously. A Thunder team at that point that looked like the best team in basketball and didn't even look close at that moment. I want to give the Grizzlies a game or two on their home court, but I think Popovich is just going to pick apart this team in these wins. and they're gonna have too much to fall back on, and Kawhi's got to take over. And it's not just a Kawhi thing. It's, guys, Danny Green can't be taking heat check shots. They got to play Spurs basketball.
Yeah, the Spurs are like the exact opposite of everything I just said about the Thunder. Like they're, or maybe I should say, on paper, they're not necessarily more talented than the Thunder either.
Right.
But they have a absurdly high number of wins based on that talent because of Popovich, because of fit, because they know how to put a product out there that can win.
Right.
And we see they rest players and it doesn't matter. They're still competitive. So, they have that level of greatness. What they have not shown in the kind of post Tim Duncan era is that they can translate that fully to the playoffs. Yes, it might be unfair because the Thunder were kind of playing out of their mind last year and really should have beat the Warriors and had a chance to win the title. But the Spurs all season were, right there supposedly with the record-setting Warriors, but maybe, the thought was they might even be better suited for the playoffs. And then it turned out they weren't. And so this year's team, I don't think in the regular season could separate themselves from that. We won't know until we see what we get out of the postseason. And as you point out, the Grizzlies, they're a team nobody likes to play. Like they're big, they beat on you. They're, just big and defensive and not fun to play. Right. And then you've got Conley. So between Conley and Gasol, that's two really talented players.
It really
I'm
is.
picking the Spurs in 6, but I know they are not enjoying the fact that they have to play the Grizzlies.
I need the comments to hash it out in the comment section below. What do you guys think? Who's winning each of these series? How many games? I will give you no credit if you were right, because no one remembers when you're right. That's how it works. At Professor DRZ on Twitter. We'll be back literally an hour after this clip is posted. You can watch the Eastern Conference preview where we're going to hash out even more fun predictions.